Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Ceres podcast. I'm Stelios, your host and founder and director of Ceres. In this news review, I'm thrilled to be joined by award-winning newcomer and young fish fry Jamie Russo from Redcloak Fish Bar in Stonehaven. With David taking a brief break, Jamie and I will be diving into some exciting industry updates. But don't worry, David will be back next week to unpack the budget with us, so plenty of insightful analysis is on its way. At Ceres, our mission goes beyond creating great products. We're dedicated to delivering top quality content for the fish and chip and hospitality industry too. This month, we've rolled out hundreds of articles to keep you informed, along with new resources like market reports and our Business Knowledge Hub category. Definitely visit our blog and see all the new content and all the new categories. And of course, we're constantly bringing out new episodes, and hopefully we've got some more pod squads coming up soon too. And if you're not on our mailing list, here's a reason to join. You know, in recent times, we've run really good competitions, like a chance to win a pallet of batter mix. There'll be more of that soon. And exclusive monthly offers. This month, we're offering free gravy with every purchase of 3 batter mixes. Last month, it was a similar one where it was curry. Before that, it was the competition. So we're always doing good offers, and that's because it's part of our goal to pass something back to you guys. So to stay up to date on the latest deals, make sure you subscribe to our mailing list, which will be in the episode show notes, or you might miss out. Now, on to today's show sponsor, the revolutionary Ceres Natural Degreaser, if I do say so myself. This powerful cleaner is the ultimate solution for tackling tough grease, oils and fats, you name it. Formulated with natural ingredients, it's absolutely non-caustic, which is vital because it's good on your hands and good on everything else that it touches. It's completely biodegradable and it's safe for professional kitchens. So when it goes down the drain, it's taking all that fat and it's neutralizing it. It's killing it off, so it's not going to stick, and it's basically cleaning your drains as it also goes along. You know, it's perfect for everything from floors to counters. It's a go-to degreaser for fish and chip shops, restaurants, hotels, and catering businesses alike. And yes, it works wonders as a pre-soak solution, or even just add a bit to your fabric when you're washing, and you'll notice it gets rid of all that tackiness that you get on all your aprons and towels. Visit us at www.ceres.shop for free next day delivery across mainland UK, plus shipping to Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, British Isles and several European countries. Stay connected with us by following us all on social media. That's all of the places, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. X. And don't forget to join our mailing list, and the link will be in the episode show notes for exclusive updates directly to your inbox. You can also join us on the Ceres Podcast discussion group on Facebook, and why not keep the conversation going rather than just messaging me afterwards saying, oh, Jamie was great, oh, Stelios, I didn't like that, or I did like this. Put it on there. I'm not shy. Go ahead. If you don't agree, go ahead and say so. Enjoy this episode of the news review with Jamie Russo, and keep your eyes peeled because we've got lots of great content coming out post-budget. Jamie, welcome to today's Read the News.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I think it's still called Read the News. I keep changing it, but the concept's the same.
Yeah.
The concept. But thanks for joining me, because David's off on a sabbatical at the moment, and he's sorting out some staffing headaches. So we just thought we'll crack on.
Yeah.
We just thought, for some reason, you've been really wanting to do this episode. Why is that?
I just, you always do such a great job of it, and I wanted to come try and not mess it up. And there's obviously a lot in the news right now, and you guys are keeping up to date well with all the changes to and the speculation over the budget and that. So I thought it'd be a good time just to pop on and have a chat.
annoyingly, regarding the budget, it is still we're recording this and we've got about 10 days away, and it is still speculation. Some news has come out, but we're none the wiser. But we'll discuss that later on. But yeah, I just think there is a lot of news over the election period. There wasn't actually a lot of news, so we there was a lot of election news, but there was nothing worthy of anything else. There was definitely no hospitality news, no fish and chip news. So we just a lot of articles just crawled to a slow, and everything did become quite political because, well, that's what was going on at the time. So yeah, it's nice to have a good flow of articles again, but I think that the budget, that's the next big thing. It'd be very interesting to see how that impacts, well, people, the industry, and the wider economy, because with all these things there is a lot of unintended consequences, the butterfly effect, as they say. So and also you guys have the added complication of being a devolved nation, so there's what happens over here, and then there's usually like I always call it like a bit of a plug-in or an add-on on top that you guys have. So it'd be interesting to see what the days after the budget brings for you guys in Scotland. So, I don't think you guys are going to be able to eat anything up there soon.
Oh, I know. We've still got our haggis crawling around, so.
You've got. I was not going to make any Scottish food jokes. I was really going to be sensible, but now you've started this thing.
I'll get the blame now.
Well, I didn't say it, did I? Didn't say it. So, our first article for the day, JB, is. You've chose, can McDonald's hold its ground against Greggs? And just a quick summary for those that haven't listened for a while. Greggs has emerged as a strong competitor to McDonald's only in the UK, challenging the fast food giant, offering value for money meals, breakfast item, plant-based options. And Greggs is really known in the UK. It's not known anywhere else. It's got hyper-local appeal. So why did you choose this article?
I think I chose it just because it doesn't just apply to the likes of McDonald's and Greggs. It all comes down to, like you said, value for money, which right across the food and drink industry is more important than ever. Obviously, we've seen McDonald's with their first decline in sales since the pandemic. So it's clearly shaken them a little bit. And, fish and chip shops, the whole of hospitality has probably seen a bit of a decline where people are looking for this value for money alternatives, looking to reduce the amount of times they're going out, they're eating out, they're getting takeaways, and deciding to eat at home instead, or again, just reducing the amount of times they are going out. So it's very much across the whole of hospitality, not just the giants like McDonald's that are probably seeing the effects of the increased costs and all that. Because obviously we've seen, the article obviously says the Big Mac, it's gone up 30% since 2021. We've seen an increase in the price of the Happy Meal with 40% since 2019, and their medium fries up 44% since 2019 as well. So they've had to change with the times. They've seen their increase in costs for their products, their packaging, their staff costs. So they've had to put their price up. They can't continue to take the hit. But this obviously does mean that customers aren't going to eat out as much. McDonald's used to always be this cheap meal that you could go out, enjoy with the family. But it's not as cheap anymore. It's not extortionate, but when people are looking to save some money or make cuts, these luxuries are going to be the first to go.
I'm slightly on a different side to you.
Okay.
So I believe that McDonald's and Greggs are all still great value, as are fish and chips. I think that everything has gone up. That's what inflation does. Everything goes up. I think sometimes, especially in our industry, we focus too much on the fact that things have gone up. However, I don't think McDonald's is in deep crap
No,
here. I'm not just
no.
defending them here because everyone seems to think I'm obsessed with McDonald's. But I didn't write this article. I was just checking as you were speaking. I was just checking to see who wrote it. It wasn't me. It was someone else. But I did see the notes when it was being written, and that the month it was written, there was a quarter-on-quarter sales dip of 1%.
Yeah.
So like for like 1%, like what's amazing is that I don't think any other company would get out of bed for 1%.
No.
Like they'd be like, nah, not even worth
Yeah.
it. McDonald's obsess over everything,
Yeah.
and I think what is, and this is probably why the article's a little bit unfair on a real level, because it's global McDonald's that's actually having an
Yeah.
issue, you know, and that's because of what's going on in Russia. They've had to sort of buy them all back and close them down or give them back to the traders over there. Then obviously there's troubles in Ukraine, there's troubles in Israel, and so they've ended up like buying loads of stores back in all of these countries. So I think operationally there are some challenges for McDonald's now. Are they dearer? Yeah, they are. Is everything else? Yeah, it is. So, but if you look at the, you only have to open the app now to see the amount of offers they've got on which is, again, that's new for McDonald's, which tells you that they're hunting down volume. Yeah. They're trying to drag people through the door.
No.
Through the scruff. They're literally grabbing people in, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'd say, but one thing. There is a common thing. I think there is a common phenomenon though. Greggs. If we look at Greggs for a moment, another very interesting company, I think they are doing well.
Yeah.
I think you can't take that away from
them.
No. They've expanded their menus, extended opening hours, and they're still really cheap or great value. They very rarely are they expensive at anything at Greggs. So I think this is what's really increasing their footfall.
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that Greggs are going after McDonald's. I think that Greggs are going after everyone's business.
Yeah. They've obviously they've published their first half of the year earnings and they're up 14%. So that's they've taken customers from more than just everyone. McDonald's. It's but yeah, they've managed to. I had a look because the slight differences in the prices regionally. But my local one has only gone up 33% for the cost of a sausage roll since 2017. Only, I know.
No, but to be fair, that's not bad. You said 2017.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Obviously, and I know that there's a big uproar because a lot of these stuff that are stored in the ambient displays aren't. There's no VAT on them, which I know upsets a lot of people.
Only people in the industry.
Oh yeah. Because customers are not complaining that we're not throwing 20% on their sausage roll, but yeah, it does probably help them manage to stay competitive, keep their prices as low as they can, whilst making a profit. I do know that they're also fighting for this healthier options. They had the target of getting 30% of their the items on their shelves healthier options for 2025, and they've already hit that target.
What do healthier options mean, though? Like
that's exactly it. Because when I think of Greggs, it's the sausage rolls. It's not. We're not thinking about going and getting a salad or going and trying to find a healthy alternative from there.
I always find that the healthy options always baffle me because in 2008 or so, McDonald's invested quite heavily in Pret-a-Manger.
Okay, yeah.
And they then started doing salads and sandwiches. But it was a well-known fact that people ended up going in there, looking at the menu, thinking, "Oh, I'll just get a Big Mac."
Yeah.
So and the same is going to happen with Greggs. I'm not being funny. It's not health food. Like it is just food. Like at least it is food, and there's cakes and the stuff like that. But I think the definition of health, like in Greggs the Bakers, and also that it's easy for them to say, "Oh, we've increased our healthy food offering," because it just doesn't need to be cake or a snack or a baked good. It just needs to be something else. That's all it needs to be. So they've got a good starting point to come from. the thing is with Greggs always, I think that they are relentless. Their main goal is keeping prices low.
Yeah.
And I don't believe for 1 minute that customers are going in there for a healthy fix. I don't believe that customers go anywhere for a
No.
healthy fix. I don't think they come to your shop, my relative shops, and people listening to this. They're not coming there because they want to be healthy.
No.
They're coming because it's tasty, convenient. They run out of time to cook. They just fancy a treat. And I think, Greggs is probably one of those anomalies too. I know people that frequent Greggs a lot because they're local to them, to their work. And it is cheap.
Yeah.
And it does make you wonder sometimes, well, if I haven't had time to cook something, I will just pop in there and grab a sandwich and a coffee. So I do think that they've really been hyper focused on keeping the prices low and keeping the footfall up.
Yeah.
As have McDonald's. I think on another note, I was in a McDonald's the other day. People would not be shocked to hear. I think it was Friday. It was like 6:45 in the morning. Maybe it was earlier actually, 6 a.m. I'm not sure. It was an early meeting. And it was interesting because it was full of road workers, full of them. And I remember years ago, when I was a bit younger, going to like CAFs with my dad, and they were full of road workers. But CAFs don't exist anymore. The British iconic CAF has, I don't know whether it was COVID, I don't know what it was, but something has made them all open after 9 o'clock, which is odd because if you want breakfast, you want it before work.
Yeah.
And it just feels like McDonald's have eaten their lunch, and I think Greggs to some degree. I think, a nice bacon roll and a coffee from Greggs isn't going to set you back more than £3.
Yeah.
But McDonald's is probably not far off for a egg McMuffin or sausage egg McMuffin. So, but the old-fashioned greasy spoon, which was famous in the UK, it just doesn't exist like it did.
No.
I don't know if that's the same in Scotland.
No, I know that if I'm driving down the road in the morning, you'll see Greggs packed, people queuing up to get their bacon butty and their coffee, and you don't see the same amount of cafes as there used to be, and like you said, they aren't open until later on now. They're more they're trying to target more of the lunch trade now, and that's clearly where they think that they're going to be able to survive, where they're going to be able to make their money. But yeah, when you are being able to get your roll and a coffee for less than £3, it's hard to compete with that.
Yeah, and I think this is why I guess chip shops probably struggle against Greggs more than McDonald's, because I think the base price at McDonald's, and although the portion is smaller at McDonald's, the base price is probably very similar. You're in for a tenner really for a meal, give or take. Whereas Greggs, but again, this is why I don't really classify Greggs as a full meal. Sometimes it's a snack. It's different if you're getting a sandwich. Maybe that's a sandwich and crisps. That you're in for a meal there, but it's a lunchtime meal. It's not an evening meal. But I think that I can see how lunchtime trade can be affected. But you've got a chip shop, and I could see how if there was a Greggs on your street, you'd probably really struggle to compete at the £3 mark.
Oh, absolutely,
So I think this is probably why. Well, and I think this is that probably reinforces the soreness about the disparity in the VAT, because in the fact that they don't have VAT on a lot of their food items, although Greggs probably now sell more hot food than cold food or ambient food, which means they actually do collect VAT and pass it on. Which, I know it's not a topic for this, but it's just a side note. But I'm utterly convinced that if the government actually cleaned up the VAT system, that Greggs would probably just prefer it, because I think that there is like a deprecation in their business where they've got ambient food, which is probably half of their turnover now. Well, actually, probably less if you count a coffee as well. It's probably less. And so I'd argue that if everything for them just out of home had standard rate of VAT on it, it would just simplify their processes massively. So it's interesting because I think Greggs would probably like a cleaner system, but again, that doesn't make them less competitive.
No.
If you think a sausage roll is $1.50, maybe, I don't know, you're looking at what, another 30p, 20p.
Well,
it doesn't put them in the chip shop territory, does it?
No.
So
it is.
So is Greggs quite prevalent in Scotland? Because that's something I don't know the answer to.
There is quite a lot of them, and they are quite a popular choice. I know that there's one in Stonehaven which seems to be busy a lot of the time. In most towns you go to, that there is a Greggs.
The town I used to live in, Nuneaton, they have
Okay. Yeah.
three Greggs on a town centre. So one on each side. So there's three entrances essentially. And there's three Greggs, and they're all busy at lunchtime, every single one of them. And now, how many of them stay open into the evening? Probably not all of them, maybe one of them. I don't know. Where I take Alex to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, my son Alex, there's a Greggs, and I just sit in there sometimes, grab a coffee with my laptop, or I'll go to Costa Coffee, whichever. And but I've noticed that stays open till 7.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it seems late for a Greggs.
Right? Well, the one in Stonehaven, it's open till 6. So they have like shifted and opening later, and obviously maybe that's with them putting their pizzas on the menu. Maybe that's what they were hoping would people would come in for their pizza, or just maybe on their way home from work, come in and grab. But I agree. It's not like, what we're going to have for tea tonight. We'll have a Greggs.
Well, maybe it is. Maybe that's just something we're not aware of. But I'm not aware of that. I barely go Greggs as it is.
Yeah.
So purely because there isn't one on my doorstep. Well, there is one in our little town, Atherstone, but I don't ever go there. So I don't know. I just feel like maybe there's something there. Maybe the crazy thing is, Greggs opened next door to a well-established bakery in our town, but well before I moved here, probably about a year before, 2 years before. And I don't think they care. They're not bothered. They will open anyway.
Yeah.
And to open directly next door to another bakery, I find that mental.
Yeah.
But they both seem to still do well.
Okay.
But again, it's just strange how people's appetites have really grown to like baked goods, or at least the offerings that they do. And obviously they do sandwiches and so on now.
Yeah.
But if you ever go into a Greggs, just look at now how there's a lot more heated cabinets.
Okay.
And I think this tells you that there is a pattern emerging, that they're selling a lot more hot food now. And obviously that is at the standard rate of VAT. Yeah, they do soup, they do coffee, they do like southern fried chickeny bits. I always get Alex every now and then. So I think that's in a direction that they're moving in, which I don't know if that's worrying for our industry or whether it's just a sign of the times,
Yeah, I do think that, something we've got to keep an eye on, but at the end of the day, if people want fish and chips, they're going to come for fish and chips.
I think that's the point. I think the point we've always got to focus on, that if we shouldn't worry about Chinese food, Indian food, Greggs. I think that if people fancy fish and chips, they're coming for fish and chips, and if they fancy Indian food, they're going for Indian food. And I think sometimes we worry about the landscape, and look at McDonald's as an example. Every man and his dog that's got a street food business is doing burgers now. So everyone's after everyone's lunch. It's competitive. It's just it's a competitive landscape, and that's a good place to be. If we think that fish and chip shops have a lot of competition, just look at pizza, just look at burgers. Just a little small town like Stonehaven, how many Indian restaurants or takeaways you have? How many Chinese you have?
That's it. It is. They're everywhere, and it is, as long as you focus on doing the best that you can do and putting out a great product every time, there's nothing to worry about.
No. So do you go to Greggs for your Scottish burnt rolls?
I couldn't tell you last time I was in a Greggs.
You go there. You must go there for those Scottish burnt rolls.
Burnt rolls, yeah.
I thought you lived for them.
Don't worry, I'll bring you down some next time I'm down your way.
Well, last time you brought me something, our other guest stole it. He knows who he is. If he's listening to this, he knows who he is. Yeah. You're still fuming about that, I can tell. So, our next story today was expert. To be fair, he is an accounting expert. Suggests adding VAT to cake to plug the budget gap. So the UK government is considering. No, that's actually a lie. The summary: the government is not. But they're probably considering everything. But in terms of this article, they're not. But let's just go with it. The UK government is considering adding VAT to cakes as a way to address the budget deficit. Tells you we eat a lot of cake if cakes can plug a budget. Cakes currently enjoy zero VAT, while other similar products like confectionery are taxed. the proposal argues that cakes are non-essential luxury items and should be taxed to generate additional revenue. Why did you choose this one? Is it because it's like really got you going?
Yeah, well, I think that the VAT, the whole the VAT is a very complex thing which a lot of people do not understand fully. Obviously, initially, Rachel Reeves, when speaking about the budget, said that income tax, national insurance, and VAT would not be touched, because she didn't want to she didn't want to overtax working people. But I think that if we look to go and add VAT onto like your cake, it's just going to add this additional complexity. We see what happened with Jaffa cakes, where McVitie's thought that, you know, what some people thought is just a light-hearted, is it a cake, is it a biscuit, was you know, a big thing for McVitie's, which would have cost them a hell of a lot if it turned out that they were a biscuit. But they went to court with this giant Jaffa cake, said, look, it's a sponge, it's a cake. They looked at the ingredients, the texture, and the fact that when it's left out, it goes hard, when it goes stale, rather than a biscuit, which would go soggy. And they won their case that a Jaffa cake is a cake. So,
have you read up on all this? Have you been testing?
Yeah, have you not seen my Jaffa cakes in the background?
No, I don't. I think you're probably waiting for me to say that this is abhorrent and it shouldn't happen. However, I'm sort of leaning towards the fact that cake is a luxury, and in my mind, it's probably still too far, but like pre-war, we didn't really eat cake. Post-war, the nation was poor, so cake was a very it was a luxury. People would have ate cake at birthdays, Christmas, you know, especially post-war. I guess after the 70s, that's when cake has become abundant. Yeah. You know, it's cheaper, sugar was cheaper, flour was cheaper. So I think the nation's got into this habit, and I say the nation, all of us, where cake's gone from 3-4 times a year, I guess, depending on how many kids you have and everything, because you're having birthdays and special occasions, to then weekly, you know, for a Sunday lunch, we'd have a bit of cake or dessert. And now, going back to the last conversation, talking about Greg's, sometimes in many places, cake or dessert has become daily. Yeah. And I think that's probably what's fueling a lot of the obesity pandemic. You know, because I do think it is a pandemic. I know that word's overused now, but I think that locally in the UK and America, I think that if you're ingesting 30, 40 grams of sugar with a cake, with, you know, and then obviously on top of your other foods, which again on their own probably aren't the worst thing in the world. If you are having a portion of fish and chips, a sandwich, steak and eggs, just a moderate meal with all the veg in the world. Yeah. But if you're having cake every day, I think your blood sugars are really going to take the toll. I really do. And I just think that's a treat. It's not food; it's a treat.
Yeah. But then it's complex enough as it is. But then we've seen how hard McVitie's fought, like, with a cake. So are we going to see people like trying to come away with other?
I think the reason why they had to fight that is because of the fact that the VAT system or VAT legislation has never clearly been defined. Yeah. The only place it's been really black and white is hot food. Yeah. But after that, it's a bit loosey goosey, and I think this is why. If you go back to the podcast I did with Les Howard, I don't know if you heard that. He basically says this is why things have to go to court to sort of clarify them. And I do think, actually, if you just change the law and said all out of home food or all cakes, there you go. So one part of me thinks, like, do they just expand the sugar tax and actually say all sugar from the point of production has X amount of tax on it that has to follow through. And then naturally cake goes up by whatever percentage because, but then the nation is getting fatter. You only have to look at me to see that I'm not massively obese, but I am big. And you can see how that carries on having knock-on effects. And there's people a lot bigger than me. And you think, well, if the average person is like me, carrying a few too many kilos, then and the person that's on the more end of the extreme, you're seeing kids now that obesity rates in children are rising massively in the UK. I don't think it's all because of cake. No. I think it's crisps, cake, chocolate, snacking. We have this issue in our house where we're constantly keep the kids fed, make sure they don't, Whereas I'm just thinking now, no, 1 minute, what if we just go back to eating 3 square meals a day, make sure they're full. Don't get me wrong, you're allowed a treat, but and this is what every parent will be going through. I'm not alone here, but I do think that obesity in children is rising. It's plateaued in adults, but that's still not good because you want it to reverse. And now, will tax help? Probably not.
No,
on its own.
No.
In that article. No, it wasn't that article, I don't think. It was another article, but which we are going to touch on. And I'll mention it again. But, sugar tax, it has been successful, actually. I was really hard knocking it overall. But it has meant that their drinks are reformulated. You probably can't reformulate cake. You probably can't make cake with sweeteners. So I think that, I don't know, I think, for me, it's not the worst thing in the world. I genuinely think this country needs to start separating the difference between food, or break food into categories. For me, food is what you sit on the table to eat, and sandwiches are food. But cake, for me, isn't a food. It's a snack. It's a treat. And I think if chocolate, sweets, cakes, all of these things had VAT on them, I think it widens the collection pool and hopefully makes people think twice before eating them, So I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
What was in the I think it's the next article we'll look at. I'll go into more of the healthy eating side of things. But in terms of your Greg's cakes, they're still able to do them at an affordable level where it probably won't put people off. If you're going in to get a yum yum or going in to get a donut, whatever, you're still probably going to go get it. But where I do think it'll see people struggle is your independent cake makers that are doing your celebratory cakes, your birthday cakes, where the price of a cupcake from them nowadays is about £3. So
£3 for a cupcake? They're having us on, mate. They deserve to be charged that. Look, if the cost of living crisis, mate, if people have £3 on a little cupcake, they deserve to be charged.
That's your mind made up now.
No, I do get what you're saying. I thought you was going to go slightly different with that. I thought you was going to say the Gregs and all them lot can't afford, can afford to add it because it's, but the likes of the celebratory cakes, everything, maybe then that the case is then you do single individual portions of VAT rated and a larger cake for home parties and stuff like that are not. But I'd imagine that people would just buy a cake to eat for a week. So I just think for me, the whole thing is a treat. It is a treat. It's a sweet treat. It's not food. I think that's my opinion. I know. And look, anybody listens to this that wants to disagree, and you do, that's fine.
The thing that is a whole complexity, but probably if you were to put a whole, all confectionery cakes, biscuits, all in the same category, and just to make it a more...
It doesn't even have to be standard rated, in my view.
No.
It could be 10%. It could be 10%, so...
But then that might add more...
No, come on, everyone's got EPOS systems now, haven't they? There's no complexity there. It's just everyone always says this about complexity. Maybe when everything was done on pen and paper and blackboard, but now it's just I've got to change a setting on my EPOS. I don't think it makes a difference. But I think this is all because, I don't know if you noticed the news story I put up the other day, but I think now you're upset. I can tell what you're doing here. You're defending blindly Tunnock's snowballs, which are VAT-free. Yeah, I know. I can see it from a mile off. Yeah, because you're thinking if cakes have VAT, Tunnock's are going to have VAT, and you're not having it. I can see it. You know,
we just can't have it. We just can't have it. Scottish delicacy. We just.
Well, you know, it is, to be fair. But no, joking aside, I think that I'm broadly a fan, and it's broadly because I'm probably going to get someone who listens to this blow me out, and I'm giving myself a little bit of room to backtrack it. But I'm broadly a fan of taxing on expenditure, not like wages.
Yeah.
I think that people work really hard all week. And if they're struggling to get by, I just don't think they should be taxed on their wages, which is why I'm really not a fan of national insurance and all that. I think that, I think that's a tax that's it came out for one reason and it's evolved over time and it's moved away from its original purpose. And I think no one should be taxed for working as such. Like, we need to work. So, you know, if I've got to pay for my national health insurance, that's fine. Make it clear that that's what I'm paying towards, you know, or pension contributions. And I think that would be nice if the government ever cleared that up and said, you know, this is your national health insurance. Okay, great, thank you. And this is your pension contribution. That'd be great. But I think they obscure all these things. All governments, not just this one, not just the last one, all of them. They obscure things so we remain thick and don't understand things. But I do think that if you're getting taxed on expenditure, so if me and you earn the same money, but I decide to not buy cakes and sweets and chocolate or a fast car, or maybe I choose the fast car and you choose the other things, well, we get taxed on the purchase, not, you know. So if the other person who doesn't buy all those things, then they've got more take-home pay, don't they? You know. So that's my thoughts.
No.
Anything we've missed on that topic?
No, it's just the accounting expert obviously then goes on to propose the 25% VAT on.
Oh yeah, he did. And I didn't really touch on that in this, and I think that bit's deluded. I'm not gonna lie, I think that, and I'm not just saying that because we're in the industry. I think that again, I think we've just got to be careful that, you know, that this country just doesn't become, I work, I pay tax, I buy things, I pay tax, I give something to my kids, I pay tax. And I think 25% for anything just sounds extreme. It's a quarter. I don't know. It just sounds a lot. Like, whereas if you widen the pool, why does it need to be so high? You know? And one of the things that when I did the podcast with Les is one, and anyone listening to this that hasn't listened to it, it's pertinent because we're talking about VAT, and we've got version 2 coming out probably in a week or so, or probably at the same time as you listen to this. You know, in Europe they do have lots of items that are VAT rated, but hardly any of their items are at 0%. And I think what that does, it means that lots of things can be at 5 and 10%. And I think in the UK we've got lots of things that are 0 rated. And I sort of understand that too, but it also then means that we've got lots of things at 20%. And I do wonder that would that burden be spread more equitably if things were at 5%, 10%, you know? So it's an interesting point. Like, for example, I would argue that if I'm getting trainers delivered to my house by Amazon, let's say, or whoever, ASOS, I'm trying to think of brand names now, like Sports Direct, maybe that should carry extra VAT than going to buy them at the store, you know. And I think things like this, that for me, you know, if I'm buying a Gillette razor online, again, should it carry more VAT than it does if I went to buy it from Tesco or a local store, at that matter? So I don't know. I think that again, the VAT system is probably used incorrectly to some degree, and it penalises people on both sides of the coin. So I think 20% is too high anyway, but I think 25% is even higher, so it's not great. So,
well, that's it. I worked out that if I was to keep my margins the same and none of my costs were to change, I would have to add 43p onto the price of my fish and chips. And people moan already, you know, it's getting expensive. that's before we take into account that any increase in the cost of the products, your wages, national insurance, it's looming that it might go up for employers. So it is. Before you know it, you're adding nearly £1 on.
Someone once said to me, and it's completely anecdotal, and I've done no checks here, but someone said to me that fish and chips is usually always mirrored minimum wage, but 1 hour's worth of minimum
Okay.
wage. So I still think if that is true, and we've not done the data to check
Yeah.
that, and if that is true, then we're still not doing too bad.
No.
Again, this delusion and again, this all comes from media. When the media is constantly going to people and saying, "Hey, do you think fish and chips is expensive?" Again, they've not focused on what some of the figures that you said about McDonald's early on. Greg's is still dearer than it was 3 years ago. It's going to be. Everything you bloody purchase is more expensive. So if it's been a rising tide effect, then fish and chips is not expensive. It's basic economics. But the problem is the media obsesses, and it's good sometimes, but also negative other times, because they obsess over fish and chips. And you think, fish and chips have gone up. Everything has gone up. Like they went to the petrol station earlier, right? That went up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that, I think it's, when you hear customers say fish and chips has gone up, I almost feel like you can't pander to it now.
Yeah.
You've almost just got to say, really? What hasn't?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right, because I think this is, or challenge them a little bit and say, oh, did you expect fish and chips to stay cheaper than everything else that went up?
Yeah.
Like, and I just think, are we pandering to you guys? I don't have customers that are chip shop customers, but are you guys pandering too much to your customer? That, yes, it is dearer. Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
But everything also is. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer.
No, and at the end of the day, like you've already said, it's still good value for money for what you get. You still get a good meal, and it's more expensive than it was, but it's still great value for money.
I'm a firm believer that fish and chips is probably the most superior meal. Like, it's filling. It's probably too big a portion sometimes, but in terms of flavour, in terms of the fact you're getting a fillet of fish, you're not getting I remember years ago we tested some chicken from a Chinese chicken supplier, as in they supply Chinese takeaways, they're not from China, and it was just shredded bits of what looked like grey meat, and because they're going to sauce it up, it's going in a sauce, it doesn't look like that, whereas fish and chips, you can't adulterate it. You just cannot. Like, you've got let's say a 6 ounce fillet or an 8 ounce fillet or whatever the ounce the fillet is, you can't take any off and add to it something else. It is what it is. You're battering it, it's going as it is. Your chips are freshly done or bought in, but still they're done the day before, whatever. You cannot adulterate fish and chips. And it's not, and it's annoying actually, because when everything starts to change and we start talking about UPF, which we're going to mention shortly, fish and chips will probably be classed as a UPF. It probably will be, but it's actually not that bad. And, and considering to a lot of other processed foods out there, I just think that fish and chips is definitely one of the best takeaway items. And that's why it is also dearer, because you are paying for a chip that's been processed on site or off site, but still it's a good quality potato. You've seen the efforts that the farmers are going to produce. I just think people, maybe we need to have this firmer touch with journalists and customers now, and just say, get over it. It's not expensive. And I know it's not a way to endear customers. I know it's not, but at the very least, even the other day, a customer of mine had a journalist at his shop, and the piece of the story, and it was a national story, was fish and chips is expensive. Tom Kerridge is £35, and another chip shop in London is £15. £15 in London, fish and chips. That is not a lot.
No.
I'm not being funny. And the thought that Tom Kerridge is expensive in London is an absolute joke, because if it's £35 in Harrods, can you, just to give you an example, aside from the tourists, who just go to see Harrods because it's Harrods, £35 for someone who's from Kuwait, Bahrain, or Middle East, or whoever who's frequenting Harrods regularly, that £35 is like me spending 10p in the shop. Yeah, that's the difference, because they're multi-millionaires and
Yeah.
billionaires. So the question is, why isn't it £50?
Yeah.
Because it's in
Yeah.
Harrods, So the Ivy was selling fish and chips 7 years ago for £27. Like, so you've got to understand, you're paying for the ambience, you're paying for the service, you're paying for different fish seasonality of fish, different species, and so on and so on. So yeah, the media they just latch onto something and they keep going and keep going, and I think maybe we've got to say now, when we do these interviews, it's just say, get a grip, get a grip. Like, it's boring. Like, and I think then they go find people like outside your shop and be like, how do you feel about fish and chips being expensive? And of course they're going to say it's terrible. My life's going to end, because they can't switch their lights on, So yeah, it's always, I don't know, it's always fish and chips, which again is good and bad. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword, but you never see the media get excited about the cost of a Chinese takeaway or the cost of an Indian or a pizza. Like, it's just like, okay, pizza's going up. But fish and chips, it seems to pull at the heartstrings, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. Every single time.
Yeah, it's mad. But again, it's a good and bad thing.
Yeah.
So our next story. Oops, 1 minute. My browser just decided to glitch. The next story you chose, employment reforms, isn't it? No, it's not. It's government treating us like children. So, when will the government stop treating us like children? So this was an opinion piece. I didn't have to research this one too much because I wrote it. But the article criticises that the person, that's me, criticises the government's increasing role in regulating personal choices, particularly through measures like sugar taxes and restrictions on unhealthy food advertising. The author, that's me, argues that such policies treat adults as if they cannot make informed decisions, as they infringe on personal freedom. Why did you choose this article?
So I understand why the government are getting involved with, like you've already touched on, childhood obesity on the rise, a rise in obesity across the board. But I don't think that the measures that the government are trying to impose are doing what they want. Obviously, this has come off the back of a fish and chip shop in Wales being told that it's got to have fruit and veg on their menu, which I just think's ridiculous. I know that no one's ever come to me and asked for, can I have fish chips and broccoli, or have you got any veg? No one's ever asked that. So to expect it to be added to a menu just because it's on the menu doesn't mean that customers are going to buy it. Doesn't mean that it's now going to be a thing. Your fish chips and veg. It's just, personally, I just think it's silly, and it's going to increase the. This shop's going to have to buy it in. It's not going to sell, and it's just going to be thrown in the bin. It's going to waste a lot of money.
It'll be on that too good to go.
I know. Yeah. I imagine getting your too good to go from a fish and chip shop and coming out with stems of broccoli and carrots.
I think what we're going to see, annoyingly, we're going to see more of this.
Yeah.
And whether it actually happens or not is a different matter. But I do think, I think that I read an article, I wrote about it a while ago, but it's progressing somewhat, in Newcastle, that fast food restaurants can't open near schools and so on. And I think I can understand that it's there to protect children, but children shouldn't be allowed to leave school. So why are they leaving school to go to a Greggs or a McDonald's or a fish and chip shop when they should be at school? So again, deal with the problem at hand. I don't think this deals with the problem, if I'm honest. Like you said, adding broccoli to a fish and chip menu, hopefully it's seasoned and it tastes nice and they put a sauce on it, which then defeats the object, because, if I'm going to put like a nice soy sauce base on it, that's probably going to have a bit of something sweet going through it. So again, we've killed that. Nobody is going to any of these places because they want healthy food. No. It just doesn't, in my opinion, it's just not happening. I think what's more likely to happen, I think what would have been smarter is if these NHS bosses, again, it's not going to probably happen. It's based on, an opinion pretty much. Why don't they say, you know what, you've got to have a selection of smaller meals. There you go. You're not moving away from where you're at. If you really want to focus, like, what about, bloody the bucket of popcorn that you get from,
Yeah.
from the cinema, which I can wolf down in no time, like, which is basically air and sugar. Like, so I think that for me, we do have to be careful, but there is also issues with the NHS. We mentioned it earlier, so we've got obesity that's rising in children. So again, telling parents, oh, you must give them this when you go to the takeaway. I think parents should be well informed. I think by separating food versus snacks, I think that helps. I just think that, I don't know. I just think fish and chips generally, and again, this falls off the back of the last article, always gets the blame.
Yeah.
It's because it's always at the forefront of the media. They'd have you thinking that people are eating fish and chips 4 times a week. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's someone out there that does. But again, that is not the rule, it's the exception. So in this country, we've now got, we mentioned Greg's earlier, you've got McDonald's, you've got all the normal ones. You've now got Tim Hortons that are opening, Krispy Kremes that are opening. People's sugar intake is just going through the roof. And I'm convinced that fat gets the blame for what sugar did. And I think that fish and chips generally gets the blame of all food options, not Domino's pizza, which is layered with fat and then loads of other fat and more fat, And I like a Domino's pizza every now and then, but I know what's in it. I'm making that informed choice. I eat it very rarely. And maybe, again, this comes down to education, because maybe I'm in food business, so I understand that is a treat. If you look over at in Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Subway recently, or maybe last year, still recent, lost a court case because they were saying that they shouldn't have to charge VAT on their bread. But actually, the court found that their bread had more sugar in it than cake. Yeah. And so it's VAT rated at the same level as cake because they VAT rate cake over there. So I do think that government need to step in to some degree. They need to tell us that this is food, this is a snack. Like, if food's, you're good to eat that, like, but this is bad. But then telling businesses like what they should do, because what happens is, let's say that we live in a world where this actually happens. And the next step is them mandating that customers are served it either as part of a meal deal or that customers buy it. And I just think, you know what, it's not going to happen. People will just rebel. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that the NHS has serious problems. So, well, what made you think of this article? What made you think it was, pertinent?
Well, like, going back to the point you said about the restaurants not getting to open near schools, we've seen it with KFC, we've seen it with proposed for all takeaways. My shop, there's 3 of us in a row. There's me, there's a pizza shop, and there's a cooperative. If the kids aren't, the kids that come out at lunchtime, if they're not coming into me, if they're not going into the pizza shop, they're going into this cooperative. They're not coming out with a banana. They're not coming out with any healthy choices. They're coming out with crisps, cookies, tubes of Pringles. It's
energy drinks.
Well, it's exactly it. So that's them. They've got in there. They've got their free choice, so they can choose whatever they want, and that's the things they're going for. So, like you said, we should be focusing more on education and encouraging the healthier options for people rather than limiting what they can get to. Like you said, children, if they're kept in schools, they can still go buy crisps and brownies from the canteen. There's still these things on the menu, probably less sugar in them than if you're going to the shop, but there's still these options there. So if you do lock them in the school, they're still going to have access to these unhealthier snacks and foods. But
it's well intentioned.
No, I agree there.
So I get that, but it just reeks of being a bit not thought through, and it wasn't thought through because it clearly was just an opinion. It wasn't. They weren't laying down the law. But I do think that if we're looking at school kids, they should just stay in school, keep them there because they're annoying. We don't need them out in the local economy anyway. Like not until they finish school. And again, I think Andrew Crook said it in one of the a video that I saw him on recently. What news channel was it? Maybe GB News, I'm not sure. And he said the focus needs to be on, or maybe it was Andrew, but Andrew agreed, but maybe it was the GB News person. And they said, again, the focus on fish and chip shops when it should be on all of the chicken shops that are on that street. There's some shops in London where there's probably like out of 100 shops, there's 20 chicken shops. So let's not, again, we're blaming chip shops. And Andrew did actually say fish and chips has been around for 160 years. That hasn't changed. Well, the portions have got bigger, I guess, but on the whole, fish and chips hasn't changed. So maybe we could bring back like, a fish and chip portion that used to exist pre-70s, that would be interesting. Because I guess I've always wondered, how much would people be willing to pay for something like that? If it was a 3-ounce fish and a 6-ounce portion of chips. Like, I wonder if, I don't know, off the top of your head, what would you charge for something like that? Just very quickly. Don't get a calculator.
No, sorry. So what size of fish, sorry?
3-ounce and 6 chips.
6 chips, yeah.
Not 6 single chips. I mean 6 ounces,
That's similar to our small portion, so you're like £6 something.
Okay, so
£6-7,
so you've got to sell it for like a shilling or a bob. So that's the goal. So no, I do think, again, like, so what's going to happen next is they're bringing out the terminology UPF, so ultra processed foods, and that's going to be really bad. All the articles I read in my Apple News feed is how bad UPFs are, bad. But what they're not going to tell you is that flour will end up being a UPF because it is ultra processed. Whatever you say, when that crush, baby food. UPF and baby milk UPF. Are they bad? No, because people need to. So I think what we're trying, unfortunately, these words come out and then all the misinformation comes around behind it, and it will be classed as a really bad thing. But actually, it's not. You can get organic UPFs. You can get all of these things. Like if you had an organic farley rusk. I'm thinking of a kid's thing. Like, well, then that's a UPF, but it's also organic. So I think that we've got to be careful that all these classifications, if the government just say, oh, all UPFs are going to have VAT on them, well, fish and chips would fall into that. Or all UPFs are unhealthy, so there's an extra tax. So I just think you've got to be really careful how far you go down the line. Not you, but I mean, how far people go down the line. And like I said previously, I was probably quite harsh on sugar tax. And when I wrote that article, government treating us like children, I had a phone call from a friend in the industry who laid into me massively. And he said to me that actually sugar tax had its intended effect. It created reformulation. So the people that made drinks, look now, for example, when do you see, and this is his example, and he's right actually, when do you see normal full sugar Coke or full sugar Pepsi be advertised on telly? It's always Diet Coke, or it's a zero or Coke Zero drink, or a Pepsi Max drink. So it has created reformulation. And I was looking at it from the point of, well, it only raises 300 to 400 million in tax. And he said, well, that's actually a success that it's low, because the tax is just the stick. It's the stick. The carrot is the fact that they've reformulated, and he said, you can agree or disagree whether sweeteners are better or worse, but the fact is we know sugar is bad, so at least we've reduced that. But when my house is we've got a school on our road, which is where my son goes, and there's another school on the other side where the older kids go. And when you see kids of my son's age, so 10-year-old, who have a Munster or a Red Bull or whatever, and a packet of Roundtree's fruit pastels for breakfast, like there's no way I want to be in that class, mate. Like, I barely want to be at home with my kids, like, because I go to work. But like, to see kids wired up on that stuff, there's no argument for me. No one's ever going to tell me that those things, the sweets, Red Bulls and so on, like, why they're not taxed at 50%, VAT at 50%. I don't get the logic, because and that, for me, then you don't need a nanny state. If you basically tax everything like that really high. Look at cigarettes. We know, and he's was my friend's argument. So he's saying it does work because cigarettes were abhorrent. They killed people. People were addicted to them. So taxing them has put people off having cigarettes, And obviously smokers don't like it, but I'm sure the ones that did quit appreciate it afterwards. But I do think that the likes of these sweets that have become everyday things
Yeah.
now, not just a weekly, monthly treat.
Mhm.
You know, I think that's what's changed things. The abundance. It's important to remember that humans evolved
Yeah.
constantly undernourished.
Yeah.
You know, we were always, our ancestors would have always been striving harder to feed their
Yeah.
family. If we go back hundreds of years and thousands of years, we would have been really fighting hard to get those calories. We probably would have expended 10 times the calories to get the
Yeah.
calories we got. Now, you do nothing. You get a pizza delivered to your door.
Yeah.
Now we're fighting the opposite problem, which is an over calorie
Yeah.
issue, consumption. So yeah, I think for me, I don't know. I think that deals with the wrong issue.
Yeah.
I think it sounds good, but it's the wrong
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. No. Like you said, the sugar tax did have its effect. It did see a lot of companies go and reformulate their products. I know that Coke's still the most popular product in my shop to sell, but then back my Scottish heritage, Iron Brew, they obviously they reformulized that, and then everyone was like, it doesn't taste the same. So they then put out this original recipe, Iron Brew, obviously more expensive with the sugar tax, but people still buy it. So I do think.
Do they use sugar-free girders to make it? Well, no, because it's one of those drinks. To be fair, it's just as popular down here as it is up there. I think maybe not as popular, but I think that I've had it before. We used to sell it in the shop. We probably still do sell it in the shop. So I think, but then Nuneaton and Bedworth, where we're from, does have a lot of Scottish heritage because they all came to work here in the mines.
Okay.
So, like, I know it sounds racist, but in Bedworth, there's an estate called the Jock Estate.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is because of all the Scottish people that relocated there to work in the mines. So maybe that's why that we sell a lot of Iron Brew down this neck of the woods. But I do think that, if people want to make the choice to spend an extra 30p on a can just for sugar, that's fine. I actually think that's probably not all the problem now because it's been reduced massively. I think the big problem now is these monster drinks, these energy drinks. Like, I think that there's evidence now that shows that if you have 2 or 3 in a day, it can send you loopy, can send your heart all over the place. So tax it accordingly. Tax it almost like alcoholic beverages. I don't care, but I wouldn't want my kids ever drinking that crap. But that's a personal choice I'm making.
Yeah.
But I also understand what it's like when kids do fall into that peer pressure trap.
Yeah.
So,
but you see it everywhere: schools, colleges, workplaces. People are just reliant on this just to get through the day, and it's they've got to have it by their side.
But it's a paradox because, like, we do less physical work as people than we've ever done in our life.
Yeah.
Like even if I had the same job as my dad, so if I worked a fish and chip shop at the same age as my dad, I would be doing less than him then. Yeah. A chip shop owner in the 70s or 80s would do a lot more physical work than you today. Yeah. Because they would have been cutting all their fish themselves, probably heading it, gutting it themselves. Their peelers and chippers would have been crapper and older. It would have been a lot more physically demanding. And this is every job. I'd even argue that an office job would have been more strenuous than an office job today.
Yeah.
I know it sounds hard to believe, but we are in some ways the healthiest we've ever been, but also the most unhealthiest we've ever been. So I think, again, we're dealing with the wrong issue here. I think that, I think personally, not that I've got strong opinions on it or anything, because it didn't compel me to write an article on it. Right? So, but no, I just think that, I don't know, I just think that, again, governments do this thing, not just this government. I don't want to make out that I'm just picking on Labour. I'm not. They all do this thing where they dress up like the issue is something else. Oh, we're dealing with this. And you know what? Go back and actually fix the issue. But then, they're unpopular and so on and so on. So your last article is employment reforms raise concerns in the business sector amid major worker rights overhaul. The UK government is rolling out significant reforms to improve worker rights, including higher minimum wages, more paid leave, greater job security. Basically, lots of things, about 20 odd points or so that are going to improve the worker's life. What's missing out of that is what?
It's us, the employer. But yeah,
Employees. I think I said employer.
did you?
I meant employees. Yeah, I got it all mixed up. But either the point is, like, they're not here to help you, are they?
No,
Or me?
no. Well, that's it. This is all for the employees. Increase their rights, remove any exploitative practices, and enjoy.
Which is
Yeah,
good. I
yeah,
get
yeah,
that. Yeah, which is
and
good.
improve their job security. Which I must admit, when I first looked at it all, I was a bit like, oh, it's all doom and gloom. But um, the things like the probationary periods is almost like a bit of a saving grace. But I think the whole thing is very much, if you haven't got someone doing your contracts, doing your handbooks, looking at your employment stuff, whether that's through the NFFF or you've got an external company doing it for you, this is a time to get your arse into gear and get that in place. I know this year I took on an employment company to do all my contracts, my handbooks, and the end of the phone if I've got any issues. And it's been brilliant for me. Even if it's a simple question about employment, whether it's about holiday pay, whatever, they're there. And I definitely think that if you haven't already got something like that in place, this is a time to do it.
Yeah.
Where all these policies are changing. Get them in place now so you're ready for it.
I think my first port of call would be just join the NFFF, and I'll
Yeah,
tell you why. Because I wouldn't jump from nothing to going to a company like HR department or something like that. I'd probably go to someone like the NFFF first, figure out what I need, and then if you still find that you haven't got everything you need, I think as a small business, you pretty much have everything
yeah,
you need. As in, because I think I can't remember who they use now. Is it Citation? I think NFFF
yeah, I
use.
think so.
Yeah, and so I think you'd get
Yeah,
nearly everything you need there, and it might leave a little gap, and then you could probably get someone else, or even they could charge you for it
yeah,
if it's not involved. But I do think then if you've got a bigger company or so on, or a slightly bigger company, you feel like you're a bit more exposed. Then I think you've got Mentor with NatWest, you've got Citation again, you've got HR department, Peninsula, and these are all very geared around like this. But if you don't, and I'm just going to echo your sentiment here, if you don't, you're going to be massively exposed. Well, you are now, actually. In actual fact, you are now, but you're going to be massively exposed tomorrow because, or at least in a few weeks' time, because these guys will be taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that, it's going to condense everything. I saw a post in the group the other day, and someone in an efficient ship group the other day, and someone said, staff are really annoying. They even insist on contracts. And you think, what? No, that's not them insisting. This is the law. So you can see if people have that attitude, they are going to have a serious problem. And it's not about, this isn't about, and I think that would be seen as exploitative. If someone's not got a contract, chances are lots of other things ain't right either. So I do think a contract is something we offer up straight away. Day one, here you go, you're here. Like we see that it just goes hand in hand. The 9-month probation, still, they've not been very clear on, although it's better than the initial thing. But what they're still kept separate is day right. So day one rights. So I think you'd still have to go through a formal process to get rid of someone. At the moment, that's the way I understand it.
Yeah.
So if I come to you and let's say my first shift is Monday, my second shift is Tuesday, but I'm no good, you would have to sit down and have a formal conversation with me to say, oh, you're a bit shit, you're late, or whatever.
You're still going to have these like probationary meetings where you're like, if they are crap, you're like, right, we need to improve on this. And then it's like, you're probably then going to have a follow-up meeting, and it is going to be more of a procedure to go through, more hoops to jump through. But, it's better to do that than go away and get sued for unfair dismissal, making sure you do it right. But that's what it's important to have these things in place so that you do know what to do if you need to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that I don't know. I'm just not 100% sold yet, but that's because I don't know the whole story yet. We're still a
Yeah,
bit kept in the dark. Day one protections, that is going to be a big thing. Flexible working, they're saying that they're going to make flexible working a standard.
yeah,
So anything other than that, I don't think that needs to be anything other needs to be discussed. So what does that mean? Like, what is
yeah,
that? Like, I feel like that crosses over with the 0-hour contracts, because a lot of students want 0-hour contracts because they find them really
yeah,
flexible. So a lot of these things, are they just dressing up things? I think one issue that is probably going to be an issue is
yeah.
SSP. Like, I think, removal of the limit, and it will be on day one, not day 4. So if someone feels like they're poorly, or even not poorly, just didn't feel like coming in today, they'll just get, what's the basic rate these days? What is it, 80, 90 quid or
It's
something?
yeah, it's around that region. Yeah,
So, you can't argue that,
yeah,
and they won't get a letter from the doctor, because why would they, for a day one
yeah.
thing? You know,
It is.
I don't know. I think this is a tricky
Yeah,
one.
the statutory sick pay is probably the one out of the big list of things that they're imposing. It's probably going to be a thing for businesses. It's going to be a bit like, oh, because for most people, are going to be okay with it, but you're going to have people that play the system. They know they can get employed,
Well,
get
and
signed off for.
so a friend of mine who's got a shop, he's got a staff member that started telling people, not him yet, that he's leaving.
Okay.
And in his contract, he does have a 3-month work contract. Now, it's probably really hard to enforce a 3-month notice contract. So let's assume, is he going to give a month? No, because he's basically going to leave them in the crap and leave. And I think this is the problem, is that it's all right in enforcing all of these employment reforms that basically make employers be better.
Yeah.
I guess, again, in their naivety, or maybe not just naivety, partly naivety and partly need, they need to strengthen these reforms.
Yeah.
But what do they do to enforce that employees do their bit and stick to their contract? The answer is nothing. Yeah. The answer is that an employee could walk out on you tomorrow and you can't do anything. No. You can't enforce any part of that contract. In fairness, that contract is one way, Yeah. Yes, you sign it. Yes, you provided it, but it is completely one way. And I think it'd be nice to see any government, not just this one. The last one would have been nice too if they'd done anything. If they'd said, you know what, no, you do actually have to work that month's notice. Yet they can't enforce 3 months because it's a general job. It's not like you're a CEO of, I don't know, BP. Yeah, so I get that. But, you've agreed to something. And if they were going to get rid of you under these circumstances, they would have given you a month's notice. So I feel like it's a shame that they haven't pushed on that, because when you add these employment reforms to the increase in national living wage, I think that's why they've sort of kept it separate, because if they bundled it all together, it would be seen as a huge cost to business. And it is, because obviously you've got increase of wages, because the rumour is now, and we've not done an updated article yet, but we're just going to wait now. There's no point base it on rumour at this point. But the rumour is now that they're probably going to make it 12.10. So, and it all started at, the next goal was meant to be 11.88. So Low Pay Commission said 11.88. And then the rumour was, well, why, for the sake of 12p, we're just going to go all the way to 12. And now it's 12.10. So it's like, it's 22p different. And on the whole, that's 5% more for someone over 21. But if they drop it down to 18 pluses, like they're saying they are, that's a 45% increase. And again, work is work. And an 18-year-old is an adult. So I get it. But again, there's no consideration for the business. No. This isn't a government gift, it's the business. And when you then pile all that together with someone who can't be asked to come in tomorrow, and then someone else that decides they're not going to give you no notice and you can't do anything about it, the employers are really, in my opinion, left in the ditch. And then when you consider that they're also looking at increasing national insurance for employers, I just feel like you're being penalised for doing a public good, because you're employing people. So that is obviously a public good, isn't it?
Well, that's it. And it is. It's just we're getting attacked at both sides. It's just cost, and now we're not going to. Employees have more rights, so that it just makes it a lot more difficult for employers, and it's going to put people off employing people. It's just going to add this. Obviously, the additional legislation which you're going to have to keep on top of, plus the costs. It's just going to make people think, what are we doing it for? Because wages go up. The only way you're getting that back is by putting your prices up. And obviously, I haven't seen any major decreases in any of my costs. They do slowly creep up. So it's just going to be constantly putting that price up. And
well, no, that's untrue. Your batter prices have significantly dropped. Just want to make it clear.
just slip that in.
I'm not sure it's going to help your wage costs much, but no. Joking aside, because we are talking about something serious here, and I think that where many people already feel the squeeze, it's gonna squeeze more. And look, I understand the government's point of view. If you're a bad operator or a bad as in, when I say bad operator, I don't mean making bad fish and chips, but if you're treating your staff badly, they want to curb that. I get it completely. But this actually, again, it's the exception, not the rule. For the majority of people, their staff are treated well. And again, is it dealing with other things that don't need to be dealt with? And I think what's probably going to happen is that people like yourself and like myself and other businesses are going to be afraid to hire. And if you're a big business, what you end up doing is adding more software, more equipment. When I was doing research about the VAT story about the snowballs, the tonic snowballs, and the other ones, the Lees, is it Lees? I think up there. It's another company called Lee, I think, Lee Snow. But anyway, they're cakes and they're little cakes, which means they're VAT free. But they were both very proud on their website to say that they've installed. This was probably like in the 90s, but probably got better equipment now. But they installed automation, and I think that's what happens is that a company would rather say, you know what, if we can implement this system, we can make double the amount, and we can hire less people, or at least maybe not hire more people. And I don't think they'll be letting go of people, especially good people, because they've got experience. But I don't think they'll be wanting to hire even more. So I don't know. I do think some reform is needed, so I won't knock them there. And I do also agree that if you're 18 onwards, you're an adult and you have adult bills and you're paying tax and you're voting. So the argument for adults at 18 plus being paid less than a 21-year-old isn't a strong one. But I think what's going to happen is, though, you're only going to take really eager 18-year-olds, or you're going to just say, no, I'm taking on 25-year-olds. And also there was an argument that I saw that the reason why they thought that it's an old argument, but the likes of McDonald's and so on, they didn't always pay more because the jobs were so flexible that it gave people what they needed, which was an income at that time. But people always use those jobs as a step up. They weren't meant to be jobs for life. So I don't think and without being rude, because I know lots of people that work at McDonald's, and I know McDonald's franchisees, but I don't think anybody works at McDonald's thinking I'm going to make this a career for life. And maybe I'm wrong, so I apologize to anybody that's listening to this that does see that. I don't mean that as a joke to take the piss. So I do think that if I'm not from Stonehaven, and no, it doesn't make sense. If I'm working at the Ash Vale and I'm at Aberdeen University, and I'm just a student, I'm not going to be there for a long time. I'm there for 2 years. I could see how they're probably not investing in me like they would Brenda, who's been there for 20 years, who it depends on that job, because I'm going to leave and go back to Birmingham or Leicester, or even stay in Aberdeen but get another job. So I don't know, are we making it just so difficult now?
Well, that's it. I don't know. Like this proposed, this rumoured £12.10, that's the minimum. So you, as a 25, 30, 40-year-old, if you're getting paid the same £12.10 as an 18-year-old, you're not going to be happy. So it's going to boost up the wages dramatically. You're going to have this tiers of different responsibilities, different experience.
Yeah, because if you have someone that works in your business, regardless of age, if you have someone in your business that's on £15 an hour, and that's pretty decent now, let's say a manager or friar or whatever, but then all of a sudden you've got to pay Johnny, who's been there for 2 weeks, I don't know, 12. They're going to say, 1 minute, I think I deserve another pound here. So it does have this effect of pushing up all wages, and I read somewhere that I think it was in preparation for this article, and maybe it's in the article actually, but the chairman of TUC, which is I'm not sure it was the name of the chairman, but a representative from TUC, which is a union, said we need to move away from the Tory style low wages, low productivity. And I was like, all right, so we move to high wages, low productivity instead. So but at the same time, you want people to get paid for a full day's work, and I'm not suggesting anything else other than that. But I do fear that sometimes minimum wages actually become the maximum wages. I
think it's going to be a vicious cycle of where they're like, we're now taking into account the cost of living. Every business is going to have to put up their wages, which is like
inflation has come back, though, mate. So, and if wages have gone up and inflation's dropped back, people are sitting on a nice little chunk there. Like, petrol has come back, diesel's come back. A lot of food shopping has crept back. And other things haven't gone up as much as anticipated. So, at the same time, if everyone's having pay rises as well, I feel like they are in a better position. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh there. I don't know.
But obviously, like, I know that for me, it's going to have to be a case of increase my prices, which is then people that come in, they're going to have less money because they're going to have to spend more on products and these luxuries. So it's going to be like this cycle that, obviously, with inflation that coming back, they probably will be better off, but it's going to have they are going to have to spend more for these luxuries and for other things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and unfortunately, it does drive consumers to bigger chains with more regulated costs. So, for example, going back to right full circle, McDonald's and Greggs, because a lot of their products, they know the cost of things. McDonald's know the cost of a chicken nugget for the next year. They know the cost of bread for another 2 years. They know the cost of all. They've got their energy hedged for 2 years. Greggs are manufacturing 60% of their products in a factory. So they know the cost of things, which means that they can be stable and more cost effective. And then it is the smaller business who is slower to react to certain things, but faster to react to cost increases because they haven't got the budget that these companies have got. And so, and then obviously, we do look bad, as small. Well, you do, sorry, because
because your batter's just cheap and everything.
Exactly. So no, but I just think that we just, I think this perpetuates the problem. But it'd be interesting. We've got to give this government some time, and let's give them the time they need. But it'll be interesting to see what they do again with the packages that are launched. Let's see what you guys, the devolved government in Wales and Scotland, do on top of that. Because I would imagine that that you guys up there especially are going to go one step further. It just seems that way because I remember over COVID, like every time that England did something, Nicola Sturgeon was like, "Well, actually, so we're going a step further." And like you guys only stopped social distancing about a month ago, didn't you?
A couple of weeks now. It's weird being so close to people.
Nice, but it will be interesting. And also, again, not being rude or biased or anything, but the devolved nations are actually, I think they drink more and they eat more than England. And I think that is a statistic. So what is that down to? Is that the way that, I don't know, it's really hard to know what that's down to. And I think everyone likes to always say, because it's poor and they're poor. But it's not, I don't think it's as simple as poor people eat worse food. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think that really... I find that a really condescending message, to be honest, that the poor people can't afford to eat well. I think that, if anything, they should be able to eat well, because if they cook more, let's
Mhm.
say, maybe it's an ability issue, not
Yeah,
a financial issue,
Yeah.
maybe. So maybe schools need to start teaching people how to cook. Maybe this government could say, for whoever wants to do it, there's it will cost money, obviously, but there's cooking lessons, at college. Yeah, and I'm not suggesting this wouldn't cost money,
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
would. But maybe there could be a nominal fee from the user. But again, you cannot force people to
No.
go to college to learn how to
No,
cook.
well, that's it.
So,
That's it.
but yeah. But on that note, have we missed anything? Was there anything else you wanted to add anyway, generally?
I
Or
don't
just...
think so. I think
No?
you've covered most of it. No.
Yeah, well, this is going to cost me a little bit of extra money for transcription because of the Scottish.
I did try to speak slower for you to understand, but
Don't blame me. Don't be. I'm not bigoted. I'm on about for our listeners. Oh, call me that. Tell you what. I'm just saying that it is going to cost me more, because transcription services usually rely on good English, and obviously I'm very well spoken, so it's not going to be me. Yeah.
well, I do apologise for the inconvenience.
It's all right. It wasn't. No, it's been great to have you on today, Jamie.
No, thank you for having me. It's been great.
All right, mate. Talk to you later.
Speak to you soon. Bye bye.